and tell us what they need to make good decisions. They are all members on the Water and Climate Leaders Panel of the Water and Climate Coalition. Please welcome with me the President of Hungary and former Deputy Chairman of the European Parliament Committee on Environment, Public Health and Food Safety, János, who we just saw recently in the window, but I can't see him right now, but I'm pretty sure he will be with us in just a second. The Special Envoy, and there he is. Welcome, Mr. President. The Special Envoy of the UN Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction and Water and former Prime Minister of South Korea, Dr. Seung-Soo, who isn't there yet, but we hope that he will join us in a bit. But with us is the former Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Environment in Finland and adjunct professor of environmental law at the University of Lapland, Professor Hannele Pokka. Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization, WMO, Petteri Taalas. And last not least, Professor Howard Bamsey, the chair of the Global Water Partnership. Great to have you all with us. And let us kick it off with President Áder. As the head of state of Hungary, you are one of the political leaders in the Water and Climate Coalition. Please tell us a bit more about the coalition and its goals.
Jó napot kívánok, tisztelt hölgyeim és uraim! Kedves kollégák, tisztelettel köszöntök mindenkit ezen a mai megbeszélésen. Köszönöm a lehetőséget.
Talk, and I would like to express my gratitude for this opportunity that I can speak on behalf of all the others. We are actually a total of 16 of us in this panel, and I have 3 minutes now to present to you the coalition, and perhaps not the members, but much more the intent and the purpose of this coalition, because members of this coalition earlier have already met in such an online discussion, and we actually know, we are aware that the most important issue of the 21st century is water. It is today, and water is going to be even more so in the years to come. We all know that 80% of the impacts of climate change, and you've also alluded to this in your introductory remarks, droughts, floods, melting glaciers, rising sea levels, all these impacts are expressed through water. We also know that between 2003 2019, evapotranspiration, which is the amount of water released from the ground into the air, increased by 10%, and this plays an important role in the development of more extreme weather conditions. We have seen that over a period of 40 years, the amount of water per capita has halved. In 36 countries, it has gone below the 1,000 cubic meter per capita per year, which is considered critical. Most of the world's population lives in shared catchment areas. We must therefore look beyond local solutions and look for regional and global ones. And we know that prevention is not the only key to avoiding human tragedies and mitigating economic damage, but adaptation is also needed to make timely and good decisions. And to do this, we need the right information, the right amount, and the right quality of data. This is why the Water and Climate Coalition was created, with a number of UN agencies working together with nation states and with dedicated companies. And it was at the inspiration of this coalition that the so-called Water and Climate Leaders platform was created, panel of which I'm a member, along with 16 other members. One of the group's goals is to build a global water observation platform by 2030. Because the analysis that will be carried out on the basis of the data gathered will help us all. It will help farmers to choose the appropriate land use and to choose the appropriate crop variety. It will help investors in their investment decisions. It will help urban planners in the design of new neighborhoods. It will help governments and companies in the development and modernization of infrastructure. Our aim is to not primarily talk about the problems, because we have been aware of them for a long time, but to talk about the solutions that balance political, economic, environmental, sustainability, social, and national security considerations together. We are convinced that our development can still be turned in a sustainable direction, but the time available is running out, and we all have a responsibility to act quickly. And for that, I wish my colleagues and everybody successful work. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much for this introduction, Mr. President. Now, Professor Pokka, as the former permanent secretary of the Ministry of the Environment in Finland, do you think elected officials take the issue of water scarcity as serious as they should, or are they rather distracted by other issues? You need to unmute yourself.
Sorry. Thank you for your question. I put my answer in this way. We would not need this kind of high-level climate and water panel if water crisis would have taken so seriously as it needed. I am quite convinced that politicians see what does it mean that there is so much water scarcity and huge gap of water, clean water and sanitation. But for politicians, it's easier to speak climate and biodiversity loss and water scarcity separately, though water scarcity and floods are part of climate change. And I feel that I am privileged that I can sit in this panel because we are now to change these attitudes, to change how we speak about things, and change how people who are collected, who are gathered together in conferences like COP26 or COP15, that they see this importance of water because it is essential, as President Áder said, it is the basic thing which must be in better conditions. And I feel that because I am from Finland, we have a lot of robust expertise to share with all countries in the world, because we really have a lot of water, but we have also had almost every year floods in springtime normally, but nowadays almost any time. And we have also seen what does drought means. And we have developed cooperation between ministries, regional authorities, and research institutes for floods, and also nowadays for droughts. So we have a joint service of the Finnish Meteorological Institute and Finnish Environment Institute based on close cooperation with regional authorities and rescue services, so that we can warn of different type of floods and maintain a continuous picture of the water situation. So this is, as President Áder already said, we need observation system, global observation system, but before we have got it, we need high quality hydrometeorological data, and I really wish that we could generate this idea forward in this world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Pokka, and we will get to the point of the data. Professor Bamsey, as chair of the Global Water Partnership, how do you think we can raise the global awareness for water as a precious commodity and not a given one?
It's a very good question, and it's one that I think has been slipping away from us. 15 years ago, or 25 years ago, when GWP was founded, there was, I think, much greater visibility to governments and globally, generally, of the problems that we were facing with water allocation, with water use and water availability and water security generally. And I think that's been crowded out by other global issues of great moment that have come along. And so the focus to some extent has come off water, and yet water is still central to most of those issues. And the references earlier to planetary boundaries, I think, make that clear. So do the SDGs. You know, you could include water in almost all of them, and so I think we need to come together around water more coherently, to collaborate more deliberately and more effectively amongst water agencies and organizations to establish a stronger voice for water in the world. If you think about some of those issues that have crowded out water, for example, climate change, the question arises why? Because water is central to climate response. It is the core of adaptation. Water is usually the first casualty of climate change, and it's the means of conveying climate impacts through the economy. So if you look at the water, at the adaptation profiles of most agencies involved in dealing with that, you'll see that most of what they're doing is about water, and yet it's not seen as a water issue generally. So I think we have a long way to go, and I do think I guess we'll get to the data question, but if we have better data, if we have it in a more usable form, if we share it more effectively and in a cost-effective way, and if all of that can be based on stable funding that is, even if it's not sufficient funding, if it's at least stable, then we can create systems. And GWP is working with WMO and UNEP and other partners to establish a better system for sharing data or sharing information, to use the higher level term. These things can help, I think, in bringing the importance, the centrality of water to the notice again of governments, and particularly of private sector organizations that and foundations and companies that really are the major users and the systemic facilitators of water availability.
Thank you very much, Professor Bamsey, so far. Secretary General Taalas, in your role at the World Meteorological Organization, you have invited the water and climate leaders to set and pursue an integrated global water and climate agenda. What priority does water scarcity have on the agenda of the WMO?
First of all, thanks for the invitation to attend this panel, and it's a pleasure to see so many good friends behind the screens, including President Áder. So WMO is the UN specialized agency on weather, climate, and water, and we have started uniting these things to think of Earth system instead of thinking water, climate, weather, oceans as separate items, and they are all having lots of interaction. And since we are dealing with climate change and disasters, water is the backbone of both of those areas. And quite often in English-speaking countries, we talk about global warming, and to me that's a misleading term, because the most impacts of climate change, they are not felt through changes of temperatures, but through changes in precipitation patterns, through melting of glaciers, and also through coastal inundation and tropical storms. So, but if I would be forced to choose one component of our climate system, I would talk about the water, because that's the backbone of climate change, and that's also the backbone of disasters. And the impacts of climate change, they're very much felt through water, and the impacts are very big on agriculture, they're very big on human well-being, and also industry and economies. And for me personally, my main concern with climate change is is related to the question, how do we feed the growing world population in the future once we are going to see more drought-related problems in so many parts of the world? We will soon see the most recent IPCC report published, and we have also some fresh model calculations there on the future, and it seems that both South America and North America, eastern part of Asia, Mediterranean region, southern part of Africa, and also Australia, they are all going to suffer of more severe drought, and also the soil moisture will be much lower in the future. So water is very much at the focus of WMO, and that's a key component for disaster risk reduction and also climate case. And of course, I agree what Áder said, that climate mitigation is going to be a critical thing, but at the same time we have to pay attention to adaptation, since the negative trend of climate will anyhow continue for the coming decades with more flooding problems and more water scarcity in the coming decades. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your thoughts, Secretary General. Let's get to President Áder. In one of your opening speech at the Water Summit in Budapest a couple of years ago, you said that, and I quote, "Water is the most endangered natural resource, which is why we must transform the issue of water into the most important question of political thought and action," unquote. Now, what kind of political action do you have in mind?
It was no coincidence that I said in my introductory remarks that this problem, and my colleagues also mentioned this, that these problems, we've been aware of them for several decades now. When I was a member of a former UN high-level panel, and we prepared our work, the report. At the end of our work, we talked about three dramas: the drama of too much water, too little water, and the drama of polluted water. And we said there that we have to make political decisions at the nation-state level, at the level of the European Union, for example, and quite clearly at the level of the United Nations also. And when we are saying what kind of data we need, I started to enumerate what we've been trying to do in Hungary in order to have appropriate amount and appropriate quality of data, which would help us for adaptation and which would help us for prevention. Let me give you a few examples of what we've been doing. Let's look at floods, the problem of too many water. Flood warning system in Europe and in our region, it's working quite well. Without our flood warning system, we would be in dire straits. I mean, we are a downriver and also an upriver country at the same time. So we would be in dire straits if we didn't have the appropriate flood warning from neighboring countries, from Ukraine, from Romania, from Austria, or from even Germany. So that is one thing, the need for data. And of course, we have to see that the amount of precipitation is distributed unevenly. A drought warning system. We have started in Hungary the installation of a system. Perhaps we will even finish this next year. We are around 70–80% of the rollout. We basically we go down to 80 centimeters of ground depth, and we are able to tell the quantity of water at different depths of the soil. So we can tell farmers when to start irrigating, especially now that it's 37 degrees outside. And of course, analyzing these data sets later on will provide enough information for political decision makers when it comes to designing or to maintaining or to installing irrigation systems. More and more adverse climate or weather events. We have hailstorms, huge damages caused by this. The whole system of warning. Storage of data is of fundamental importance for protection and for disaster mitigation. Pollution. The river Tisza, a major river in Hungary, we installed a system that would help us. Basically, if there is anything coming from neighboring countries, from the Ukraine or from Romania, there is mainly the contamination trash that is coming, it's plastic bottles. And the system detects if this amount of trash exceeds a certain limit. And we actually have a system in place that when this is exceeded, a certain mechanism is launched to actually gather all the floating rubbish on the water. But the same thing goes for chemical water quality. We are actually continuously monitoring water quality for chemical contamination. We are at the end of a coronavirus pandemic, or anyway, it's going down in Hungary. It was very important in Hungary. We were precisely measuring amount of genetic material of coronavirus in sewage water in Hungary. And we were able to tell how the amount or the level, the quantity of infections is going to increase because of this. Same important issue is how we measure inland water. Many countries of the world, from India to Spain, are suffering from a fundamental problem of using much more water than could be resupplied in a natural way. And that is not sustainable on the long term. With time, water supplies will run out. People will not have access to food. And finally, the last word. Many countries have established hydro infrastructure grids. Network loss is 60, 70, 80% in many countries. You can spend all the money in the world building new water systems. If the old systems have such huge proportions of grid loss, we are pumping water into the system and 60, 70% is lost. We need to have the information on this grid loss. So there you go. That's 7 issues, I think, without which it can be said for sure we cannot pursue sustainable water management. And without these, we cannot ensure safe supply for the population, safe supply for agriculture or for industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Probably issues that could be taken up by the Water and Climate Leaders panel. Professor Pokka, you've just been appointed to that panel a couple of months ago. What are your first impressions of the panel's work, and what do you aim to achieve in your role? And you need to unmute yourself.
I think that we know the problem, why we are appointed to this panel, this water. I don't need to explain how huge the problem it is and how difficult the situation is in poor countries. But I have been asking me during these last weeks what we can practically do. And what I want to mention first is that I think that it was very important that United Nations has decided that water is one of the human rights, because it gives the basic to make decisions in UN level, and we need them. But I come back what we can practically do. Okay, we are old politicians, we can speak. We can speak in many places. So if it's needed, we go to COP26, we go to COP15, we go to water conferences, we use social media. I think that speaking is also important. But our goal should be that after our work, water has been integrated to all discussions and decision-making processes related to climate. That's I think that it's clear goal. But also our goal should be to generate a development to establish accessible high-quality hydrometeorological data, because this is very practical and challenging goal. And as we all know, the poor countries are in a very bad position. I think that even worse after after this Corona pandemic, and they need money. They need money from rich countries for building this observation system and organizing adaptation for climate change. Without our help, they are not. It's not possible to see positive development in poor countries. And though we are so much talking about observation system, how it's important to build it, we should also look what happened after that. So education and capacity building is also very, very essential. In addition to infrastructure, we need to put efforts on capacity building and focus on the services that are truly needed. I like practically that we should promote step by step development, because we can't organize the whole globe during 1 or 2 years. But if we could promote step by step development in critical countries and critical areas, it's important. And finally, I want to mention that one basic question is how we produce food. General Director Taalas also mentioned it. It's the basic thing if we think how do we get sustainable use of water. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Pokka. Yeah, support is one of the key is a solver of problems. Professor Bamsey, your organization, Global Water Partnership, supports countries to advance their governance and management of water resources. How does the Water and Climate Coalition support this work of your network?
Well, it's an important, for want of a better word, accelerator of what we're doing. It enables us to connect more seamlessly with others working in the same field for the benefit of the countries that we're assisting. So we can help them bring together the support of the different agencies, countries, and organizations. And I come back to the private sector again, because as we know, private users of water use most of it globally, and yet we don't have globally, I think, a strong enough system of bringing those users, the private users, into a network that a mutually supporting network with the regulators and the private users, the public users, I'm sorry, of water. So I think there's a real task to be done there, and I hope that this coalition can build a broader coalition and bring together all of those who have a major stake in water security globally, because countries need the support from all the wisdom that's available on management of water to be able to deal with their SDG 6 challenges. We know from our own work with countries that most of them are not on track to meet SDG 6 at present. We know that there are a whole lot of reasons for this, and I come back to the theme for this discussion, which is data. And we know that about half of countries are reporting that to us that they don't have sufficient and clear and usable data. So there's a big task there, which I think this coalition can play a big part in resolving to help improve the data availability and its usability, that is conversion to information, which was the key word you introduced at the beginning.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Professor Bamsey. Actually, 60% of the World Meteorological Organization member states and territories report declining capabilities in hydrological monitoring. Secretary General Taalas. However, effective monitoring and observation systems, yeah, of course, are needed globally to provide information on water resource availability. How can your organization contribute to improve hydro monitoring?
Thanks for this very good question, and we are very much promoting free and open exchange of data. That's the backbone of the services that we are providing, weather forecasts, hydrological services, and also climate services. And we are saying that if you we are using models for those purposes. And our statement is that if you don't have any input data, you are not going to get those services. And if you have poor data as an input, you will get the poor forecast and poor services as an outcome. And that's very much our challenge in less developed part of the world. So that's very what we have been facing very much in Africa, Caribbean, Pacific Islands, and some parts of Latin America, especially. And because of that, the impacts of disasters and climate change they are having, we have seen more casualties and also more economic losses. And besides climate mitigation, we have to pay attention to climate adaptation, and it's critical that we have proper observing systems. We have just initiating new financing mechanism to improve the situation, to enhance weather observations, climate observations, and also hydrological observations, especially in those data sparse areas. And we have counted that with $400 million we could improve the situation a lot. And that would be an investment which would pay back the investment in several folds. So that's something that we are very much recommend. Then we have also a challenge when it comes to culture of data exchange. In meteorology, we have been classically exchanging data, and we cannot run the forecast without free data exchange. But in case of hydrology, there's still a cultural challenge to enhance the culture of free exchange of data, and sometimes that doesn't happen, and due to political challenges between countries, that's also a political question, and we have seen it happening in some parts of Africa, even in Europe, and now also in Asia. There are some such challenges cooking. And from our side, we would like to promote the peaceful cooperation among experts instead of mixing political challenges there. So there's clearly a need to invest more in the hydrological observing systems as well as meteorological observing systems, and that's what we are very much promoting. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary General. We've talked about Africa, and you mentioned Europe as well. Professor Pokka, you've worked recently within the Ministry of Environment in Finland. Do you feel your ministry has all the necessary information to make informed decisions on tackling the water crisis? And if not, which other things would you need to know? And you need to unmute yourself.
Thank you. It was a very good question. We know quite well what is the situation related water in our country and in Europe, but globally, all the necessary information on tackling water crisis is absolutely not available. There are really huge gaps in data, and the data is key. And information is essential for effective decision making, because data is the basis how to make decisions, and data needs to be shared on every level between local and national agencies and institutions, and of course across borders globally. And data has to be free and open. I have some points based on our experiences in our developing cooperation, and a few points about that. We have seen that cooperation on a technical level can be a first step even in conflict situations when it is mutually beneficial, as sharing water data can be. Thereafter, it is easier to tackle issues on political level, and as we all know, water is also highly political question. In Europe, we already have the Meteo alarm system that combines national weather information on the European level. We have also have some good experiences from regional projects on data sharing, but we need a global early warning system based on meteorological and high quality real-time hydrological observation, as General Secretary Taalas already spoke. We have some good experiences about regional or local projects, for example, in Horn of Africa and in Central Asia. There we have had quite good development. But this development, it very slowly covers the rest of the world. And I think that is why this panel is and our help is needed if we can do something real effective to push this cooperation and development forward. Extreme weather events can create major strains on a society and are felt most intensely by the poorest and most vulnerable communities, especially those living in fragile and conflict-affected settings where governments have limited resources to manage crises and help their populations adapt. I already spoke earlier about how we can go step by step and try to cover the rest of the world, which is without these observation systems and data, but it takes time. But I am very positive in positive mind that we can do it. But it needs that we all are in the same boat, all who are living in this world, and all we are sitting in this panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Pokka. And you said it very well. We're sitting all in the same boat. And of course, for sharing data, we need to finance those systems and those solutions. Professor Bamsey, question to you: how can we arrange a sustainable financing of such global monitoring solutions? Is it again that the private sector needs to jump in there, or are there other ways?
Look, I'm very reluctant to say that the private sector needs to jump in, because it's not. I don't think that's the right way to approach the private sector. It's not a cash cow for good causes. That's not how it operates. Though there is, there will be some further funding available from the private sector because that's in its interest. And we all benefit. But I think there are other ways, and I think two things would help. One, if, as I said earlier, those of us who are focused on water, concerned about water, understand its centrality to so many other of the SDGs, and particularly to climate, if we could strengthen our active collaboration, not just passive collaboration, but actually reach out to one another in the way that we're trying to build at present, to find new and effective mechanisms to work together, we will strengthen the voice of water. That will attract greater attention, and it will, I think, improve our funding base. But also, as we've all recognized, and as the very name of this coalition represents and acknowledges, water's part of the climate struggle. And we are seeing now substantially increasing support, financial support for climate action around the world, particularly in developing countries. And I think if we articulate the cause of water and its centrality in climate in a more effective manner, then we can probably benefit more from that support that's coming in the direction of climate action.
Thank you very much, Professor Bamsey. Now, I would love to end this discussion, because the 45 minutes are already over, on an optimistic note, and I would like to ask President Áder to help us out with that. Mr. President, in your opinion, what capacities do European leaders have to get back on track in meeting the Sustainable Development Goals on water?
Well, you know, there is this saying in Hungary, it's an old folk wisdom: a clever person learns on the mistakes of others. So I think it is very purposeful if we make use of all the examples that we have available in order to really have a positive ending to this story. And let me just cite a few examples. If Hungary, which is, let's say, a country of average size, of average economic power in Europe, if Hungary can allow herself to build huge flood reservoirs, to actually use them only once in 8 or 10 years when the huge floods come down, so that they should not destroy cities, that they should not destroy the living environment of people. It could be done in other countries as well. If Hungary can, and I alluded to this in my second contribution, if we can spend money on a drought warning system to help farmers, I think it is possible to be done in other countries. And if Hungary could create a system of defense that protects us against the communal waste flowing down from other countries into our country, therefore the water from the river Tisza leaves Hungary in a cleaner way than it actually came in. I think it's a matter of intent and will and national budget. Indeed, the private capital can play a role here, but the state and state funding is first and foremost the most important one. We've mentioned so many times today agriculture, food production. Here again, we can learn from good examples. Let me cite not only Hungarian examples. Israel. Israel is using 1/6 the amount of water to produce the same amount of vegetable and fruits than neighboring countries. Well, if they can do it, we need to learn from them. We need to use that example. And let's say my third example, now we are in a post-COVID era. Every country was hard hit by the COVID, very, very serious economic problems, serious GDP decline, budget reallocations. We did that in Hungary as well. Very substantial budget reallocations happened. Tax revenues slumped, went down, and we had huge expenses on fighting the pandemic. It hit us bad. It hit other countries bad as well. But the money that we have reappropriated during the past 1.5 years, if we could plan to reappropriate such amounts of money in the next coming period for data collection, for installing systems, for the adaptation, then I am sure that we can achieve the objective of sustainable development goals, and we can ensure water management, the sustainability of water management and water bases. I think the possibility is there. If Hungary could do it, other countries can do it, and the European Union can do it. We need to move beyond political declarations and not only talk the talk, but walk the walk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for you all very much for taking your time and sharing your views on this pressing issue with us, which has been extremely valuable. Thank you very much. So we are now all well aware of what leaders need in order to tackle the water crisis and what burdens they face. And in a moment, we will hear from the next generation of leaders what they expect from those who are in charge today and what ideas they have to save water. We will therefore close this talk and will immediately open the next one. And I invite you to join the second discussion. Even our panelists here, just stay in there and then listen to the next generation leaders. You will find the link on the same LinkedIn event page. Just refresh, reload the website so you see the next live stream in a few seconds.